You have to be ready and willing when you have a role, even if it's an internship, to raise your hand when you want to do more and show that you want to have a impact on the business that you're working for.
Nick Frank is a senior marketing director for MRI Software. Unlike his peers in this chapter, Nick's managed to have a meaningful amount of work in both the law and business by doing legal work on the side through his own practice in addition to his day job in marketing. If you like the show and would like to show your support, I have a Patreon listed in the description below. Patreon donors get early access to content, special Patreon-only content, and knowledge that I will be donating a portion of the money to charity. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoy. I'm joined by Nick Frank today, who is a marketing director at MRI Software. Happy to have you on. Thanks for coming on, Nick.
Thank you so much for having me, Josh.
So, as per usual, why don't you tell us a little bit about your degrees and some of your background?
Yeah, so I am a Northeast Ohio native, and I am a JD MBA from the University of Akron. Actually got my bachelor's degree in corporate finance there as well. So stayed close to home after high school. Was going the business route initially when I went to the University of Akron, hence the finance degree. And then after I got that degree, went into law school directly, did my first year of law at the University of Akron, and kind of decided my first summer that the traditional law path wasn't for me. And knowing that I already had the business background, decided to do a joint JD MBA program for the final 2 years at law school. Graduated with both the JD and the MBA, took and passed the bar in Ohio. And as you pointed out, now work at MRI Software.
So obviously you made the choice about which side to go into, law or business. Now you're at MRI. Tell me a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, so I am the one of our marketing directors for MRI Software. Specifically, I focus on the commercial real estate side of our business. So commercial tenants, commercial owner operators who might need software needs from property management to investment software. If their corporate tenants might need lease accounting, workplace management tools, all of that sort of software falls within mine and my team's remit at MRI Software. Specifically focused in North America. However, MRI Software being a growing company in Northeast Ohio, now growing company globally, I think I'm on my 7th position at MRI Software over the last 10 years. So prior to this, I was a marketing director for our global occupier space. Before that, I was living in Australia, was the marketing director for our Asia Pacific region. And before that had much different roles, usually in the marketing space, but across MRI as a whole since I've been at the company, which is coming up on 10 years.
Wow. That is a lot longer than I can foresee myself being anywhere for. So obviously they're doing something right to keep you there. But now let's kind of work our way back to this point. So you're in graduate school. What are you thinking that you want to go into? You know, you said you had this business interest. How did you marry, or I guess maybe quell, that competing interest in the law?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I always thought that law school seemed like a good choice for me. However, even before I really got into college, I always had kind of a keen eye for business. And so when I went to the University of Akron, I definitely was going down that business path. Finance is something that's come kind of easy to me. So it was an area where I felt like I'd have a lot more flexibility in whatever my future career path might be. But then, if you start working back the years, not a great economic cycle for me when I was coming out of university with my 4-year degree. Law school seemed like an easy fit. And something that would also provide some of that flexibility. So I went in my first year of law school thinking I'm going to be a corporate attorney in some way, shape, or form. But funny enough, my first summer at the university law school, I took an internship and realized that I did not necessarily care for the day-to-day life of being an attorney. Working through the prosecutor's office, the emotion behind it, the way that you have to you have to have a really thick skin in law, especially if you're in the courtroom every day. And it was just not an environment that I wanted to pursue long term. And so, speaking at the University of Akron, going to the business school, talking to some of the professors that I had worked with at the bachelor level, they had told me about this joint degree program. And I made this conscious decision after my first year of law school that my JD that I still wanted to pursue, I'm not someone who just up and quits things. That JD was going to be a supplement to my MBA, where I think a lot of people, when they go for that joint degree program, they think that MBA is a supplement to their JD. They're utilizing it as a tool to help them in their law career, where I really saw the JD as a tool to help me within my business career.
Yeah. And I only saw, I think I've only seen one person go the other way, where they started MBA and they went to JD.
Mm.
And I know that there's definitely some pushback on the law side of not wanting to do that for a lot of those aforementioned reasons. The way that people normally do it, the way that the schools and the classes are structured, it's usually just easier to go that way. But that doesn't mean that people can't do it, or that they, need to place a priority on either one of the degrees. And, obviously you're tantamount to that. So now that you are kind of questioning, I don't really know if I want to go into law, I'm thinking more business. What are some of those experiences that you had in grad school that made you think that, maybe I should be going down the business route instead?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, it was a lot of the classes that I was taking, the way that the classes were structured. When I would get up in the morning and I would have my law school classes all morning. And then I would have like a 3-hour gap in the middle of the afternoon. That's where I get a lot of work done. And then my MBA program was in the evening. And so every day I was actually doing a little bit of law and I was doing a little bit of business. And what I was realizing was the conversations that I was having in the evening in those business courses, the types of problems that I was being asked to solve, and the dynamics of the people I was working with were in my own personal thought, like how I wanted to work in my career and in my business life. I enjoyed law. I still enjoy, I keep my certifications. I still go to CLE courses. I still find that interesting and fascinating. But the courses I was taking in the business classes, it felt like that was where I wanted to be. And those were the types of things I wanted to solve for versus some of the legal questions and legal problems that I was doing in the morning classes. And that says a lot too, Josh, because I'm very much a morning person. So the law classes definitely had more of my attention probably than the business ones, but it actually worked out in my favor because those evening courses, they kept my attention. And all of the work that we were doing felt like the things I wanted to be doing. So I started to really see proof positive of what I was thinking after that first summer, going into my second year, that the business school and going and doing those classes was the right thing for me. And I can't say enough about the fact that I needed the law degree that I have, and the classes that I took, and the way and the style of teaching that they have there, in order for me to have progressed as I have in my business career. As I mentioned, I've had 7 roles over the last 10 years at my current company, and all of those, well, most of those have all been on a promotion track. And that's because of some of the things that I learned in law school, and the way to talk to people, the way to negotiate, not just for myself, but the way that I do business, the way that I work with other people. I'm fairly introverted personally, but law school taught me to be extroverted professionally. And there's a really big difference there. And I got that from law school. And despite all of the rigorous time that it takes, despite all of the studying for the exams, the debt, can't put that aside. All of those things were necessary for me to move in the trajectory that I have.
Yeah. And I mirror your sentiment about being, more introverted and then having to figure out how to be professionally extroverted. It's definitely a skill, and it's one I've learned to develop through learning how to have fun with it. And for me, that's, doing stuff like this, meeting interesting people, talking to people, and forcing myself to be out there while still doing it from the comfort of my own home.
And my wife, Josh, when we started working from home during COVID, And my wife could hear me in my office. After I get done with the day of work, she'd be like, "Who are you?" I don't know who you are, because the way that you talk in these business meetings, the way that you talk to your team, to your boss, it's so different than the way that you interact when we're at home. And it's kind of funny, but it's really is kind of a skill that comes out of it. It's not just personality sometimes when it comes to doing well in business.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It is a skill, and it's one that having both of those degrees helps you develop it. So now that we've figured out, this is kind of what you're thinking in graduate school, and as every graduate student has to figure out, where do I actually end up? So now, post grad, what kind of places are you applying to, and where did you end up?
Yeah. So one of the things that I've always been interested in was entrepreneurship, small business. There were a lot of different paths through the university and to get kind of more ingrained in some of those areas. And so one thing that really interested me even before law school was entrepreneurship, small business. Another area, high growth, that I thought I might want to place myself in. And there were a lot of opportunities at the university to get involved in those sorts of things. So at the law school, there's a business clinic there called Seed, and I started working there, which allowed me to work alongside a licensed attorney to help people who would come in and need small business advice, whether that be forming their LLCs, incorporating a business. Someone comes in with contractual work. Really started to enjoy as much the new business ideas and helping them with their business plans as much as it was the actual legal formation of the businesses. So right off the bat, I started to see that, how to help businesses grow was something that I had a big interest in. And then through the University of Akron, the business school, I got an internship through the Edge Fellows program, which placed me and a colleague to go and help a small business with, actually, in this case, formulating a whole new business plan and taking a new product to market. So being kind of the business wing for an entrepreneur, an engineer who's developing a new product was super exciting. And essentially, I was the business side of that person's inventive side, which was, again, really interested me. And this whole growing of businesses became something that I wanted to put a focus on. So when I started looking for jobs after law school and after I completed my MBA, that was what I was looking for. And one thing that I got was an opportunity to talk with MRI Software. And at the time, they were probably a 300 person, mostly headquartered in right outside of Cleveland, Ohio, software company that focused on commercial and residential real estate software, which sounds big, sounds kind of bulky, and they'd been around at the time for 40 years. So not exactly the same type of thing that I was doing previously, but they really sold me on the type of business that they were becoming. So there was some changes in ownership, in private equity, and they saw themselves on this crazy growth trajectory. Ended up interviewing in multiple departments at the company because they weren't exactly sure where to put me, but it was kind of in a positive way. As annoying as going in 4 different days for interviews over the course of several weeks can be, they really sold me on the vision of the company, which is exactly what it turned out to be, which was we're growing, we're going to grow a lot, and we need people on the ground level to help this company grow at a very high level. So I came in, and though I had a law degree, though I had a bachelor's in corporate finance, my MBA had a finance concentration. I ended up, of all places, on the marketing team because the brand positioning and the play of this company moving forward was going to take, in their eyes, somebody with my skill set. So that's how I got to MRI Software. And then there's a whole mess of growth with them, where now we're at, as I said, we were probably 300 employees at the time. We're at 3,000 now. That marketing team was 5 people. We're now over 80 globally. And I've had opportunities to grow with this business as we've acquired 30 plus businesses over that time. Organic growth has been through the roof. Global expansions, office expansions, all of that I've been able to be a part of, which has been really exciting.
So you went from this interest in finance, small businesses, and you ended up moving into marketing and that kind of stuff. So is the thought that marketing is in a way growing a business, and that's kind of how it fit in your mind?
It fit. That's a really great way to put it, Josh. It fit that way in the work that I was doing, in how we find and segment go-to-market plans, was exactly what I had been doing in some of these internships and in working with some of these small businesses and these small companies. It was, how do we get scrappy? How do we get lean? How do we find penetration into new markets? What are those new markets? My first role there was as a business analyst. So a lot of the work I was doing was helping to foresee where we could find growth. And so a lot of the things that I was doing were directly the same, just at a larger scale, which was also interesting, because as I think about my career now, you had mentioned earlier that you couldn't see yourself at a business for 10 years. And that's probably because, most people do see that 1 to 3 or 3 to 5 year jumping careers, to able to find growth. If you can find yourself at a business that has that kind of a growth already, being in a slightly larger organization like MRI versus me working for a startup actually enabled there to be more potential opportunities as the company and the business started to grow. If I had jumped in at the ground level and been one of 10 employees at a company, there's really nowhere to go except to keep elevating and maybe grow a team below you, where this allowed a lot of, movement in various different avenues in different areas. So it's kind of interesting that being at a slightly larger company that had that much larger growth provided those opportunities almost quicker than I think it had been at another business.
And it's not even as though that you lost this sense of entrepreneurship in your day-to-day. You still do practice some law on the side, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. I still do some contract work. I've done some stuff on the side with some friends who have some work that they've passed over. And it's really just to keep that side of my brain going a little bit. As I mentioned before, I still go to a bunch of the CLE courses and still like to learn all of that stuff too. And it may not be directly impactful in my day-to-day job, but it's something that I still like to know that I can do. I've never been one to quit things, and that's one of those areas where I want to keep that moving on as I continue to grow my career too.
And it's definitely something I've noticed with a lot of the people I've reached out to. It's by maintaining both of these things, you set yourself somewhat apart from some of the people I've met, insofar as they view it as either business or law, right? Some people say, I couldn't do law, I just wanted to start my business. Some people say, I really liked law. Business is definitely something that just kind of supplements it. But the fact that you kept both, I think, is a nice medium in between those kind of two extremes from one another.
And it's interesting too, because, MRI, we've done a lot of acquisitions over the last few years, and we have a team of lawyers who are involved in that piece from the legal contractual negotiation standpoint of things. Post acquisition, then the business gets handed over to us business leaders at the company. And that's as much, if not more work now ingraining that new business in that. I think, again, a lot of my experience from law school helped to really shape up the way that we do bring in these new businesses. And, one of the opportunities I had was, as I mentioned before, moving to Australia. And the reason I did was because we had acquired the largest property management software company in that region. And we needed a couple of people from our company, from headquarters, essentially, to move out there and help bring this company as part of the MRI Software brand. And that was an experience to me that felt very much like, at this point, on the other side of the world, operating almost our own independent startup as part of MRI Software for 6 months over in Australia, and running and operating that business like a startup, but then having all of the different, people globally to help support, to bring that company into the fold, was kind of almost the best of both worlds, right? I kind of had that full-on small business experience. It took a lot of my legal acumen to help with the actual business perspective of things, but then from a straight business standpoint, opportunity and career growth as well.
So you're not the first person that I've spoken to who's gone through the Akron JD MBA program, who's also been through some of their seed startup stuff.
Mm-hmm.
For listeners, our pilot episode with Dan Hampu, he was a big part of that kind of stuff as well. He enjoyed the entrepreneurship side, and So it's a common thing that seems to be coming out of entrepreneurship. And I know you had a little job there for about a year and a half or 2 years or so that really allowed you to dive into those kind of investment opportunities from a legal perspective. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yes, Josh. So the Northeast Ohio Student Venture Fund, another one of these areas, much like the Seed Business Clinic, much like the Entrepreneur's Edge program. This is really catered towards trying to find another avenue to help these small businesses. And for the Seed Business Clinic, it was very much focused on the legal side of things. For the Entrepreneur's Edge, it was all about business plan and helping a business to grow. Then there's this other form or facet of this whole world that I was involved in, and that's this venture fund piece and the investment side of things, helping to actually pre-seed companies with ideas to help them kind of springboard themselves into the marketplace, specifically into Northeast Ohio. So I was a part of that group while getting my JD MBA as well. Ended up actually running the fund, I guess co-running it with another student for my final year working with that group. And it was interesting because on one hand, it was really enjoyable. You think about things like Shark Tank, people were actually coming and pitching their ideas to us, but then for us to go back and do the due diligence to decide where we wanted to actually make investments, make real money investments into these businesses and helping them to move on to the next stage where hopefully they could find angel investors to help their businesses as well. So it was just another area where I was able to really see what it was like to bring a business to life, do the due diligence on the back end to determine whether or not there was market viability for these products. And then not only just giving them an investment, but then also being a mentor to help those people succeed moving forward, which was really exciting. And it was kind of the third leg of the stool for me to really know that I wanted to be, from a career perspective, in a place where I'm doing new things, generating business into new markets, penetrating new regions, finding new avenues to take something and grow it from something small to something really special.
You think you're ever going to start your own business-oriented business at any point in your life?
I wish I was creative enough, Josh, to think of that idea. I always thought that if I could partner myself with some sort of, engineer or someone who has some really great idea, or I need to latch on to somebody's star, maybe is what it amounts to. But yeah, there's always opportunity for those things in the future too. And one of the really great benefits of the experience that I have is that, I've worked with small businesses, I've worked with brand new ideas, I've helped market new things to new regions and areas. And then I've worked with a company now that's, for the last 10 years of my life, exploded in a marketplace and into new regions and into new markets. So there's a wealth of knowledge that hopefully I can bring to some new ideas in the future too, as well.
Looking back on your experiences, what specifically do you think having the joint degree helps you in your day-to-day? What about going to law school, going to MBA school benefits you most in your day-to-day?
I don't believe I would be where I am in my career without the law component of my JD MBA. And that's the one thing I've hopefully harped on a lot so far on this, is that, having that JD supplement my MBA has reaped massive dividends in my career. And a lot of that has to do with the way that I interact with people on a daily basis, the way I manage people, manage relationships. There's so many intangibles in law school that I think get overlooked. And, you study, and this is probably true with a lot of different degrees, but you study a lot of the technical, a lot of the book smart type stuff, but it's all of these intangible relationship building, personal building, ways of working, ways of studying, controlling and managing and mastering my time. Things like that came out of law school have been so helpful in my day-to-day job and career. And that's one of the reasons I do recommend law school when it's a component of your business development. And whether it be a JD MBA whether it be that you take law courses when you're getting an MBA too. There's some of that crossover that's available at universities now. It's been super helpful in some of the work that I've been doing. And it's hard to quantify because I can't say that because I took this course, I now am better at marketing or I'm better at leading a team. But what I can say is without it, I think people would have viewed me differently is not the right phrase, but I think I would have come across a lot differently in job interviews, in, meetings for promotions with bosses and things like that. All of those components have been really, really crucial in my development.
That's an interesting way that you put it. I've obviously spoken to a lot of JD MBAs, just in prepping for this podcast. And one thing that I've noticed as a trend with everyone is they say law school prepares you really well for the study and the rigor of any job you go into. And MBA school gives you a breadth of knowledge that law school can't ever hope to give you. And your response is much more focused on the soft skills side of law school, which is, I agree with everything that you've said, right? It's absolutely those relationships. It's going to the law school sponsored networking nights and speaking with other professional attorneys that really brings out a lot of the unspoken value of law school. But how about on the MBA side? What value did the MBA bring you?
I think you hit the nail on the head, Josh, when you said, like, from an MBA perspective, that's where the actual substance of my job comes from, right? I think a lot of the workload there and the projects, the working within teams, all of those pieces that came from my MBA program has built the substance day one of some of my job, right? And what things that I've had to do, building business plans, building go-to-market marketing plans, market penetration analysis, all of those things that I did not know how to do before the MBA program. And quite frankly, it's that level above what you get with a bachelor's degree in business, because in business school, they teach you the basics of business. In MBA, they teach you how to lead and how to build strategic plans, and the things that really ended up mattering for me almost immediately when I got into business at the company that I work at, which is interesting, because otherwise I would have come in and needed to be taught a lot of things where I got that MBA program before really joining the workforce, actually helped propel me a little bit quicker, where I think, you do hear that a lot, that people say, go into the business world a few years before you get your MBA. Having that combined with the JD actually was kind of a springboard my first 2-3 years at my company.
Yeah. I know from my experience with the MBA school, a lot of it, I came out of undergrad with my philosophy degree. So not a whole lot of hard marketable skills.
Yeah.
I loved it. And I recommend that people at least minor in philosophy. It gives you a good reference point for understanding the world and ideas. But I needed some hard skills if I was going to feel confident in my professional life. And that, to what you said, it's having the professional skills to know what to do in a group, how to understand how to do market penetration analysis, how to do financial statement analysis, all that kind of stuff. And by the way, none of that gets taught in law school, right? Mm-hmm. That is purely business focused. And so having that hard skill already developed gives you not only that edge over other people, but it gives you a sense of confidence that I've really enjoyed having, even still as a graduate student.
Yeah. And, they say, what is it? Law school teaches you how to learn, right?
Yeah.
So you get those, there is a lot of the soft skill involved there, where then the balance of the MBA provides a lot of the substance for the business piece. So it's really bringing those things together in a unique way. Your philosophy degree brings up a good point too. You can't undersell the fact that at business school, especially undergrad, everybody's there to learn business, right? Law school brings together an eclectic group of undergrads. And there's a lot of different ways that people do think, ways that people make arguments, ways that people bring knowledge to a class that makes you think differently. Because when you do end up in the business world, a lot of the people that are there did not get business degrees. And you'll see people that, had a degree in something completely what would seem irrelevant to the business they're currently in. But they used that way of learning and that approach that they took to school to bring a different perspective, which ultimately eliminating as much groupthink as possible helps a business succeed way more by bringing in all those new ideas to a business meeting.
Absolutely. What advice do you have for either undergrads, graduates, or young professionals who are thinking about the things that we've been talking about? A lot of people are pessimistic about some of the future prospects, whether it be student debt, finding a job, maybe an impending recession. What's some general advice you have for them?
The biggest piece of advice that I give to people is to keep an open mind to any potential opportunities. That's the first thing. The first thing is no matter what the role looks like, if it doesn't seem to be what you thought of as what you wanted your career to be, keep an open mind based on what that job might be in 3 to 5 years. So you go in, when I came out of law school with my JD MBA, marketing was not necessarily what I would have said was like the first role that I would want to take, but it's given me a growth trajectory that I hadn't expected. And that was because I wasn't looking at that role, that specific job. I was looking at the potential of that career, which is a different mindset. You come in, if I had come out of school and said, I have this finance degree, I have this master's in finance, I need to get a degree in finance, maybe I'd be a controller now or something, but it wouldn't be where I'd want to be right now, which is what I'm doing now, and building these go-to-market plans for all these different business segments at MRI is completely different, right, than what my degree kind of spells out. So that's the first piece. The second one that I always say to people, especially people that I work with, you have to be ready and willing when you have a role, even if it's an internship, to raise your hand when you want to do more and show that you want to have a impact on the business that you're working for. So people always sit around and wonder why they don't get promoted, or they sit around and wonder why they haven't found advancement in their career, or why they can't find the job that they want. And so many times it's because bosses, people like me, maybe don't even know that that's what that person wants to do because they don't speak up about it. They don't find avenues for them to say, hey, can I take on more responsibility? I want to make a bigger impact at this company. Going to your manager and saying, what can I do to make a bigger impact? Not just about you. I want to be promoted. I want to raise. Those arguments aren't very, from a legal background, you need to make the right argument. And going and raising your hand and saying, I want to make more impact at this company. If you raise your hand, companies want to see that in people. And those are the people that typically find avenues for growth versus people who are stagnant. And then it always upsets the manager because these people leave and they're like, I had no idea that they were even looking, right? Because they were just kind of quietly trying to find another role somewhere that could fill that void, versus actually going to your business and saying, what are some ways that I can make more of an impact? And you'd be surprised how many people just don't do that. And it's just a drive thing. It's a very simple thing, but if you do want to succeed and you want to grow, you have to show it.
Absolutely. I think that's good advice for anyone at any point in their career. So hopefully it'll be timeless as this podcast sits on the internet.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time today, Nick. It's been great talking to you. Thanks for coming on.
No worries, Josh. Thank you so much. I appreciate being here.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Finding Purpose. We want to give a special shout out to our Patreon subscribers for their ongoing support. If you enjoyed this episode, you can connect with any of our guests on LinkedIn to continue the conversation. Don't forget to check out our YouTube channel at youtube.com/@Finding Purpose Podcast, where you'll find full episodes as well as some interesting clips from each episode. If you're interested in sponsorship opportunities, please reach out to us at findingpurposepodcast@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time on Finding Purpose.